my family's been in Texas forever. I graduated high school in El Paso. My parents were actually Baptist missionaries in Trinidad and Tobago, where I spent most of my childhood. And so I grew up in that kind of world where you're my first views and understanding of the world is basically in what we used to call a third world country. Now we call it a developing country. From there, we ended up in El Paso, where I spent my youth and graduated high school. I've been practicing law here for 27 years. I married a girl from here. We met at Baylor University, attended St. Mary's Law School, and got a job here out of law school. And I lived kind of the big city thing, so I was ready to kind of check out something smaller, and have just really enjoyed living here for the last 27 years now, I guess. The reason I decided to run was just because, just this sense and this feeling that something's got to change about politics and about government. We can't continue to go on like we have been for the last 20 years, it feels like, or maybe longer, with the tenor and the tone of the politics that we have in this country. And what I see are the greatest dangers that we have, the biggest issues of our country are things that no one's talking about, which is the simple fact that Congress is not able to function anymore. It is not working as an equal branch of government. And to me, unless we redress that problem, we're never going to be able to fix any of the other problems that are so prevalent in our society. And I like to say that I'm running for this, but it's not really about electing me as a representative. It's about starting a movement and a conversation that says this has to change, and it needs to be, until the people are ready for there to be change, nothing's going to happen. But when the people are ready, then what we need to be doing is electing people, both Democrats and Republicans, that have that as their first priority, is to say we need to reform government and we need to make it work the way it was intended to work. I don't think people are as interested in labels as the pundits and the politicians are. I think what people care about are kitchen table issues. The main issues that I want to tackle is I think there are some fundamental ways that Congress, and this is where my true passion is it's actually in how dysfunctional Congress has become because of the way it's structured. I've been reading a lot and looking at the work of the Problem Solvers Caucus, which is a bipartisan caucus of people that are committed to making the House operate on a more consensus-driven basis and break down the extreme hyper-partisanship that we have. And one of the things that they're doing is getting the House to look at itself and look at its rules and to change the way it operates to become a more bipartisan body. One of the things that they've done is there actually is a select committee looking at some changes that need to be made and some proposals to be made to the House, how the House should operate and run. The other thing they did was create a consensus calendar for the first time, which is just getting the idea of having bills and the legislation of the House continue to operate and basically not hold bills that just have to do with local issues captive by political fights, and basically sort of like a consensus calendar, a consent calendar you have at a city council meeting, I suppose, but to move things through quicker that don't need to be bogged down. Create more transparency in the House, create more accountability in the House, even to make the issue where you have a more open and democratic House, because where you don't have a handful of people, a speaker or a majority leader on the Senate side, that can basically hold legislation captive, and it needs to be a more open body. The first things I would propose to do is, one, align myself with like-minded people such as the Problem Solvers Caucus and begin working on those issues. But those are long-term goals. A freshman representative of Congress is a freshman representative of Congress. There's 434 other people in that body that you have to work with. So it's not any quick panacea. It's not anything that you can just go in and say, in my first 100 days, here's what I'm going to do, and that's going to solve it. You do have to work within the system. You do have to create partnerships, and there's compromises. But that's really what this whole thing is about. Is the big problem that we have is that no one is willing to meet in the middle of the road and talk about and get to know people. But from my standpoint, I think the thing that you really have to focus on is those personal relationships, and especially not so much just the ones of the people that agree with you, but the relationships with the people that don't agree with you. What I see from other candidates is a lot of rancor that's beginning already, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, it needs to not be that sort of hostility. And of course, and I understand they're trying to draw differences between themselves and to make themselves appealable in what they see in their primary. But I think fundamentally, it's my whole campaign. And I think what this whole campaign should be about on both sides of the aisle is bringing common sense and decency back to our politics. There's no reason why. I mean, we're all West Texans here, or from Central Texas in this area. We all see things, I think, in a general sense in the same way. I think there are differences that we do have differences of opinion, but I don't think fundamentally there's really any difference. I would probably say just because something's got to give. We can't go on the way this is, and that's not about Democrat versus Republican. It's both sides are equally the same, but something's got to give in our politics, or we're in for a world of hurt.